Anytime you're working on the marketing of your business and you have to think about images for social media or your website or whatever, you automatically think about stock photos because that seems like a very natural thing to do. Go pick a stock photo, put it up on your site, go about your day. But before you do that, let's stop for a second and think, should we be doing that? Whether to use stock photos is actually not a super straightforward question to answer and can actually hold you back at times. So today we're gonna go through all of this. We're gonna talk about whether you should use stock at all, whether you should pay for that stock photography, where to find the best stock photos, how to pick a good stock photo, and finally, how to use stock. My name is Trent Kennelly. I'm a marketing strategist, and on this channel, I talk about all the things that you can do to improve your business through marketing, sales, and analytics. So if that sounds good to you and you're excited, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, comment and let me know how you feel about stock photography in general. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you somewhere in the middle? I would love to know, and let's get started. All right, so should you use stock photography? Well, the answer, like always, is it depends. Let's go through a few questions to try and figure this out for your business. First question, what is your business? So your photos are meant to add to the aesthetic of your site or your business in general. And likewise, if we're talking about your website, the aesthetic of the entire site can be influenced by the images that you're using. If you're a photographer, you should probably be using your own photos. If you're an IT service, then stock photos might make sense. If you're selling an app, you might need to find some mix of the two. So maybe like green screen photos where you can take your app and you can kind of slap it onto a stock photo. Could make sense for you. It really just depends on the business. Next question, what is your time and budget? So we don't all have infinite time and money to create our own images or pay somebody to create our own images for us. If you do, that's great. Why are you watching this video? Otherwise, you can just grab stock photos, slap them up on your site, and move on with your day. The priority is always going to come back to the importance of your website to your overall growth plan. Now, I know you're probably saying, Trent, you make that sound like the most important thing of all, right? And yes, a website is important, but if you're getting clients in the real world and that's the main way that you're pulling people in, and you only really need this as a billboard, okay, well then that's what we're gonna do. It's a question of time and the ability to put effort into this website or into your email or into your social media or whatever. Next question, is your company personalized or stylized? So what I mean by this is, do you have either a brand ambassador or a specific style that you work off of with your website, for instance, or your emails, or kind of all those things coming together? Now, you should, of course, have a specific brand look, but in certain situations, it's very specific. So a good example of this is Marcos Bravo with Live Chat. You can check out his channel here. That's Success by Live Chat, or you can check out a link to the site itself, Live Chat, in the description. The idea here is that they're using Marcos as the brand ambassador and as the face of Live Chat. And then even if you go to the front of the website, you're gonna see him on the front of the website as well, because he is the face of the brand and they're using him as the way of bringing in traffic. Now, if you're a hospital or something like that, you don't necessarily need to be so specific as you would in a live chat or an intercom situation. And so you can probably use stock photos in that case more easily and just kind of move on with your day a little bit faster. All right, so now that we figured out whether we should use stock photos, the next question is, should we pay for them or not? Well, again, the answer is it depends. Sorry, that's gonna be a lot of the answers. It really depends here on your budget. So generally speaking, most well-known stock photo sites can be very expensive. Talking about $12 or more for a photo. Now that might not sound like much to you. That sounds like a lot to me for a single photo, but consider that your site is gonna need dozens or hundreds of photos depending on what site you're using, and that adds up over time. That could be hundreds and thousands of dollars at the end of the day. So if that's not an issue for you, then that's great, good for you. You are much less likely to see the same image that you bought on other sites than you would if you just went to free sites and grabbed the nicest thing you saw there. Now, consider on the flip side that running a photo shoot for, let's say, an hour could run you upwards of $500. And if you plan that correctly, you could get a lot more photos, because $500 versus $12 per photo runs you about 40 stock images. So you could potentially get a lot more bang for your buck if you're paying $500 for an hour-long photo shoot if you plan it out correctly, okay? So it really is just kind of a give and take. You got to figure out what works for you. It's also important to consider that free stock does exist. There are plenty of free stock photo sites out there. Just do a Google search for free stock photos and you're gonna find 1,000 at least. But there are two big problems with free stock photo sites. First, it's easy for everybody and anybody to use. And once you start to spend any kind of time at all on free stock sites, you're gonna start to see certain images everywhere. They're gonna be all over the place, which means that any uniqueness that you might have built up from a user visiting your site or visiting your email or whatever you're using stock photos on is instantly gone because they'll be able to identify it on another site that's totally unrelated to you. And of course, they're gonna realize somewhere in the back of their mind that that's a stock photo. And it just kind of destroys your heart a little bit. The second problem is the Creative Commons license. What this means is that attribution is required when you take one of these images from these sites. Attribution is where you're giving credit to the author or the artist verbally underneath the image, and you're providing a link back to the link to the image that you downloaded it from. There's some very specific rules for how to give attribution. You can check out the link in the description for how to do that. But the basic fact here is that you have to muddy the look and feel of your website. You have to put text on there you don't want to put. You have to provide a link out of your site and out of your funnel. You can check out this video for funnels and how to build those properly. But you have to provide that link out and allow people to exit if they want to when you're using attribution, when you're using free images. So really, even though it's nice to have free images that are just up there that you can grab and put on your site, I really try very hard to avoid them if I can. All right, so now let's talk about my recommendations for where to find the best stock photos. So first, with paid stock photo sites, I would really advise you to check out 2020/Envato Elements. So these two come in a bundle. It's $200 a year for the whole thing. And you get unlimited images, and if you're using Envato as well, you get unlimited vector images, which are, picture images, animated images sometimes, that are stylized to look a specific way. And that whole thing is a really good deal because you can download as many as you want. But more than that, these images, especially the ones from 2020 really prides themselves on trying to look very real and very realistic, okay? So they're trying to find models and actors and looks and feels that you can relate to a little bit more easily versus something like iStock Photo, which would be my next recommendation, which is much bigger and better known, but tends to have a little bit more of that stocky feel, okay? So there are still a lot of very good photos on there, but you also have to sift through a lot of this is obvious stock photo stuff to get there. And then the final one, you just can't ignore this one, is Shutterstock. So Shutterstock is very expensive, but they have just about anything that you're looking for. So if you need something very specific, Shutterstock is probably the best place to go to look for it. And then as to free stock sites, look, they're all gonna have kind of the same image libraries. You tend to see a lot of repeats between them, but there are a few that stand out because they have bigger libraries and they're easier to search. And those three are Pixabay, Pexels, and Unsplash. Remember again that all three of these are gonna require attribution, and any other free stock photo site will also require attribution. So you need to read the rules on that very carefully. All right, now let's talk about how to pick a good stock photo. So this is really, really important when it comes to stock photos because certain photos have that stock photo look and they're so bad sometimes you actually just find them as meme templates all over the place and they get really, really popular. So what we're looking for here is something that's realistic, that people can relate to, and then that's not too over the top. This is gonna be different based on your business and the text around the image. We're gonna get to that in a second, but let's just break it down into three different types first. So there are three types of stock photos, generally speaking. There's vector art. So this is stylized art that you're often gonna see in the form of colorful shapes and bubbles, or artistically drawn people and things and activities that are happening that are generally gonna be kind of throughout a website. So this is something that is a definite style choice that people are gonna be using throughout their site. Photos, which are photos of people and things. And then the third type is a partial green screen. So it'll be a normal photo, but there will be a green screen cutout of a section. So a good example would be somebody holding a cell phone, and then you have a green screen area over the phone that you can then put in your app or whatever. You'll see the same thing on a laptop, lots of different green screen styles. All right, so here's some questions that you can ask when we're looking at stock photos. So you're gonna see that these don't all apply to every type of stock photo. Some of them apply to some of them apply to others, okay? So the first question is, does the person look natural? This obviously does not relate to vector art because a lot of the time the entire intention is that they don't look like normal people, okay? But you're trying to figure out for photos and for partial green screens whether this is a natural looking photo or not. This is a good example of something that is not natural looking, that's an obvious actor and that's an obvious set. This is an example of something that is natural looking. Now, obviously in this second one, you can look at that and say, yeah, that's a stock photo, but it takes you a little bit longer to get there. You can more easily believe that this was a real natural shot that was taken in the wild, okay? Second question, is this shot relatable? Supermodels are not relatable. I'm sorry, but they're not. People like you and me living our daily lives are relatable. You might be thinking, oh, that doesn't really apply to vector art either, but actually this one does apply to vector art because some vector art can feel relatable and some can feel not so relatable, okay? It really depends on how harsh the lines are, how big or small different elements of the characters are. A lot of these things can really speak to whether something is relatable or not. I would say that this is probably a more relatable vector art piece than this one is. Next, does it set you apart at all? So this is applicable to all three of these, yes, but it's most important for vector art because if you can find the right vector art and the right vector artist, you can make your site look extremely unique and interesting, even if you're finding it off of a stock site. So this is a great example of some vector art right here that I really like. This is an artist I actually use quite a bit. You'll see a lot of their art on my site. I'll put a link in the description to this artist so you can take a look at them yourself. They're on elements.envato.com. I'm sure they're elsewhere as well, but that's where I find them. This is an example of a photograph that is very unique and stands apart. And this is an example of a photograph that does not. Honestly, we've all seen this before. All right, now let's talk about how to use stock photography. So basically you only ever want to use it on your site. I know I kind of made it sound like you can use it on a bunch of other channels like social media, but the only other exception I would say is email sometimes. You should never ever use it on social media because social media is a little more personal. You're trying to build that personal connection with people as much as possible. And stock is easy to identify, especially when it's on social media. And all you're gonna do is distance your audience because they're just gonna see that you're putting out junk. So in each case, just sticking with the website for a minute, the question is about the overall site style. None of the three types of stock that I mentioned, vector, stock, or partial green screen, is a one-off choice. You have to think about them on a holistic site-wide level because that site needs to have a consistent look and feel. Now, can you mix them? Of course. It's not that you have to have only vector or only stock or only partial green screen. You can mix them as much as you want. It's just a question of consistency. Good example here is Intercom. Intercom uses a mix of real product shots, stock headshots, and vector art to create a very unique and consistent look and feel across their site. So how can we find consistency? There are a few good options here. The first one is to stick with an artist. So artists are either gonna have a consistent style or they're gonna have a series of shots in the same set from an image that you found that you can use for the entire site. If an artist has a lot of variety in a bunch of different sets, it's very likely that they're using some consistent methods. So it might be that they're using the same type of lighting or the same type of editing approach or temperature controls, lots of different types of things that they could be doing. And it makes it much easier to align the imagery. Or if you don't want to stick with a specific artist, you can just look for consistent traits between images. You're looking for things in the image that you can link between other elements of the site and other images to kind of bring everything together into a holistic view. So some examples of consistent traits between images. Color. So you're looking for a consistent use of color. If you have bright yellow in a picture, you want to find a way to tie that bright yellow into the other images on that page to build that consistency in. Temperature is another good example. So images are usually either cooler, which means more bluish, or hotter, which means more yellowish. So if you've ever seen a movie that was set in Mexico, it's almost always hotter or more yellowish for some reason. I don't know why. But in any case, this bluer or yellower feel, that temperature, gives off an emotion in the same way that color does. You can check out this video for more information on color and emotion and psychological triggers and that sort of stuff. Lighting and shadows is also very important. So you want to look for the type of lighting. Is it softer? Is it a little bit harsher shadows? That sort of stuff. Because if you have lighting changes between images, it's going to give off kind of a weird vibe. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you to understand a little bit more about stock photos and how to use them and whether you should use them, all that sort of stuff. I have to say that I have a love-hate relationship with them. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. I'm more often to use a vector than anything else, but I would love to know how you feel about them. Please let me know if you have a love-hate relationship or a full love or a full hate. I would love to know. Let me know how you feel in the comments. Otherwise, give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, and I will catch you in the next one.